All right, welcome to another episode of Tea Time at Physics. Today we have Calvin Chin, founder of Calvin Chin Martial Arts Academy, only about 3 minutes away from here out in Newton. So I actually met Calvin through his son, Drew Chin, who I played volleyball with over a decade. And only just recently he told me that his dad owns a martial arts academy right here. So when I when I was talking to you, one thing that stood out completely was I'm a physical therapist. I work with people in pain, and I said, Calvin, you have any pain? And you said no. You might be the only person that I ever met who had said no to that question. Everyone has something, right? And I think it has to attribute to all of your practice that you've gone through your years. So why don't we start off with how do you get into martial arts? Give us your journey, and then we'll go from there.
Uh, I started martial arts as a youth, and being Asian, it was something that was part of our culture. So, back when I first started, there wasn't a lot of Chinese martial arts around. It was mainly karate because karate came to this country through the servicemen. So I studied a style of Okinawan karate when I first started, and it was formal. You were exposed at the time to, the ideas of martial arts, and that that there was the different martial heroes. But getting into it as a formal type of training was only available in the karate schools. So I studied an Okinawan style. I started when I was probably about, I don't know, it goes back maybe 10 years old, 11 years old. My first exposure was to judo, and I didn't like that. And I fell into this, which was formal classes. They had the warm-ups, and we would learn forms and so forth. So I really enjoyed that because there was a lot of discipline to that.
You mean the more, not judo, but more traditional
The
kung fu style?
traditional karate, actually.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
you didn't like judo.
I moved into
You
the
like karate more. Okay.
yeah, because of the formality, and it was a traditional art, and they did the bowing and so forth. But I got fascinated by the fact that you learn sequences and you build coordination and so forth. It wasn't just about how to learn how to defend yourself. So it was growing pains, learning that, and getting the discipline from the martial arts training, and the mindset of how there was so much respect and discipline. And then as I found out more about what I was learning, the Chinese arts started coming into the country. So I met my first teacher that in 1970. Actually, he immigrated to Boston, and I was introduced to him, and it was a automatic bonding sort of. So I helped him open his first school, and being a teacher from Hong Kong, he actually hadn't taught group classes the way it's taught in this country.
Yeah, what was his name, just so we can reference him?
His name is Quang Tit Fu.
Quang Tit Fu.
Yeah, that's his Chinese name.
Yeah.
So helping him open the school, I actually, because of the experience I had teaching, at this karate school, I used that same format. And most schools teach, it uses a militaristic format. You line up and you do the drills and you go through the same motions over and over again. And I still do it the same way today, mainly because, one of my sayings is that we're creatures of habit, and we have to do it over and over again. And, we go through life, we develop bad habits, but in training, you learn about habits that you're developing, and you develop good habits through, sequential learning and repetition.
And when you say habits, what do you mean? Like,
Well, we move our body, and we mimic things throughout life, and we just do it. We really don't pay attention to how it's actually done. You just go through the
Absolutely.
motions. So most injuries come from doing it wrong. So even kids that play sports, because I teach kids, so I realize that when they start to play sports, they just play the game. Now the skillful kids, or the kids that are talented, start to learn the game and learn how to, kick and move and run. It's all body movement, but most of the time they just trying to just copy what they see, and that's how you get hurt.
Right. And I think that's why we even connected further, because we share the same principle. It's like, hey, the body don't understand muscles, don't understand just I need to do this task, I need to get it done.
Yeah.
And there is a more efficient way and a less efficient way to get it done.
Right.
And the more efficient way is usually a more natural flowing type of response versus something that's a bit more forced, a bit more conscious.
Right.
So when I was hearing you talk about that, I was like, hey, instantly, I think we need to get on this podcast right here to discuss further.
Yeah, because even martial arts people initially pick it up and all they want to do is develop a strong, powerful strike. That's easily said, but not easy to do because you're just using the wrong strength.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
The wrong strength is maybe not integrating the body or just sort of a brute strength movement. That's what we call it.
Like forcing it through.
Forcing it and not using the correct muscles. When you just hold your arms up like this, the first time you hold it up, it's there, but it's not relaxed.
So, like here, and I'm using a lot of strength to keep me here.
You're there, and you're using what takes to hold it there. But then if you held it there for a period of time, and you do it consistently, your body would start to delete any erroneous tension that's in that position.
Right, your body finds like a more efficient way to keep you there without using so much extra strength.
Because when it's a training, but the thing is, your brain, if you do things often enough, starts to think, well, this is what I want to do, and then it holds your position. But so what's amazing is your body has all these sensory systems, and that's what I talk about in the Tai Chi paradigm.
Yeah.
So when you use your sensory system to feed back the information from the body to the brain, and it starts talking to each other, then your body starts to recognize what's really the correct way. So even a posture, you can get into it, but it just looks like a certain way, but you actually can't move in that position if you have excessive tension in the body, like even throwing a punch or so forth. So I have a lot of advice when someone throws a punch, that they shouldn't put the brakes on the punch if you want the power to reach its end, like a car. You slow down, you put the brakes on, and then everything dissipates. But when you throw a punch, it has to get power from one point to another, and that's in all the sports, like a golfer or a tennis player.
You want all the force to transfer all the way through without having to get caught in one joint versus the other.
Right, and it passes through because the whole goal of that is to hit the target with an impact so that it has penetrating force. So that's that side of it. But in motion, when you're moving for, another reason other than striking, it's how do you move your body virtually into these positions and start to, get the body to recognize the correct motion.
I think right now is a good time to talk about the paradigm, because I recognize you have that paradigm. Each word stands for something, and that is sort of the premise of how you teach.
Yeah.
Right.
So that came up because I wanted to have a system that's you can control it, because Tai Chi's, there's many styles. Right. And most people that do Tai Chi, they focus on a totally different aspect. They talk about the energy and they talk about this, but it's not something that most people can relate to. But if you talk about positioning and structure and the importance of how you move your body to get the look and what the body needs to go through as a practice to develop those muscle memory positions. Everyone talks about muscle memory, but what is that other than the term, right? So we have to try to understand it. With what I do, it's movement and balance of movement and using the right strength. So I call it prevention of age-related degeneration. So if you go back to when I first started studying, at each stage of my life, I wanted to learn what was important at that time. So now, at my age, I teach a lot of older people, and I think it's the most important thing is to understand what they're learning and why they should be doing it a certain way.
So what is the big difference between, like, if someone were to come to Calvin Chin Martial Arts Academy versus maybe to someone else who doesn't have that traditional background as you do? What would that difference look like?
It becomes movement that most people watching would say, oh, that looks like dance. So the big difference between dance and martial arts is the conscious intent of the motion. It's not just aesthetics, it's actually functionality on one side, but functionality also ties into proper movement and how the body works. And if you go into some of the older concepts of how people studied martial arts, as it progressed out of just being a martial art, going into maybe more the health aspects, it's more about circulation, breathing, moving your joints. So the alignment of your skeleton and how you breathe it's all stuff that everyone's talking about today. There's more about how you should breathe and how you should work your body. That's what you do. You're training people to use their body correctly, working muscles, body alignment. So I try to fix it before it's broken. You fix it after it's broken.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah, I'm sure it can go both ways too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
of course, someone who is in the middle of the journey to, getting fixed or, doing better with their body mechanics, and they also practice Tai Chi
Yeah.
with you guys at the same time, I can see that they can have an enhancement of each other.
It supports each other in many ways. So we have to learn to listen to our body, right? So if you can't do certain things or it doesn't happen, you have to understand why it's not happening. Like flexibility, that's a big variant among, everyone. So you think kids are all flexible. That's not true. There's some kids that are so flexible and there's some kids that are just as rigid as an older person. So that's just how your musculature is.
Right, and I know you guys see a lot of kids and older adults.
Yeah.
Like you guys run the gamut,
Right.
as well. So I want to learn more about your venture into Tai Chi, because I think as a youth, were you always interested in Tai Chi? Because the general sort of stereotype is the Tai Chi is more for older people, and it's like slow movements. Like my aunt would do it, and my grandma would do it.
Yeah, the saying is first Shaolin, then Tai Chi.
Yeah.
That's a progression. So if you study martial arts and you're still interested, you would end up going into the Tai Chi because it's more gentle and it's less physical, mainly because of the characteristics. Young people like to do things fast, more physical and so forth. But I got into Tai Chi because my teacher taught it. And so it was mandatory for me. I had to learn it. But even when I was first learning, I didn't appreciate what it offered till, I...
And how old were you when you first learned Tai Chi? Yeah.
Probably my late 20s.
Okay, so you're still very young.
Still young,
Like
yeah.
it wouldn't be like a 20-year-old right now.
Yeah,
They wouldn't gravitate towards that.
Right. So, but there's a learning curve switching from karate to kung fu, from kung fu to Tai Chi, because of so when we spoke earlier about habits, habits are specific to what you're practicing. So if you practice something very stiff, it's very hard to get rid of that stiffness because your body's already, conditioned for that. It's like specificity of training. When you do something and that's your training, your body tends to respond like that. So a stiff style is very hard to break the habit until you reconfigure everything and then reverse everything that you've learned, and that's really very difficult to do. It's so switching to Tai Chi, you have to get rid of all the habits that you learned from the other art.
So walk me through what that's like for you. So you were a young man, you were doing kung fu, and you were doing karate and then kung fu, and you were making these really fast, rapid movements, right? And then suddenly your masters say, "Hey, we can do Tai Chi." Right. So how did you make that transition? What was that learning curve like for you?
So learning Tai Chi and Kung Fu actually is the same process, because we use forms, which most people see them done in the parks and so forth. So forms are like a book of movement, and you practice those to house those motions, and then you build off of that all the different concepts and theories, the structures, the postures, the transitions. So in Tai Chi, we do the same thing, but the musculature that you're using, it's the same body, but how does that conscious intent play into the motion? when do you relax and when do you issue power. So today you see a lot of Tai Chi using the force side of it. That's one aspect of it, but Tai Chi actually should be done slow. It should be methodically done, and it should be done very fluid. So you build off of what would be sort of linear motion, maybe that has stopping actions, and you have to take all those limits out of the motion to build continuity.
So you take away the stopping action, like the deceleration action.
Yeah.
And then so the whole form flows from one to the
Right.
next.
So the deceleration is a lot less in Tai Chi because there's no real acceleration, because it's done at a single pace, and there's this concept of being smooth and even and round. So those are guiding principles, and the guiding principles for how we do Kung Fu and Tai Chi is what actually changes how the motion is
Now,
learned. Yeah.
Did you like Tai Chi right away when you started to learn it, or were you like, I don't want to do this, I want to do the fast stuff?
No, actually, it's intriguing, but when you realize how long it is, because a lot of younger people, when you first do something that's very long, you're kind of impatient. So when you do the form and it's like 15 or 17 minutes long, one of the things that runs through your mind when you're doing it when you're younger is, when's it going to end?
Yeah.
But now at my stage doing it, and I do it a lot with the students and so forth, it goes by very fast. And it's so people that are doing forms that are like that, that's 15 to 17 minutes. My classes are an hour and a half long, so I have elderly people, anyone over 55 theoretically is a senior. But when they do it, I have people like 80 years old doing the whole sequence for an hour and a half. They're standing and they're doing all these motion, and then they're practitioners, so they're okay with it. So that's kind of what happens to you. You develop I guess it's the understanding of the benefit. So if you understand the benefit, then you will do the practice.
Yeah. So what are the specific benefits people can foresee themselves getting when they're practicing Tai Chi?
So it's the continuity of motion is one thing, the relaxed aspect of motion, because your body has to be, there's a concept to use your mind and no strength.
Use your mind and no
strength.
strength.
So that's sometimes misinterpreted. No strength only means the correct strength, but you have to understand what correct strength is. So the practice is going through and sort of debunking all the movements, but people can't necessarily do it on their own because there's always this conflict between understanding what you're trying to do and what you see. So when you're doing the movements, you have to go through this process until your body gets comfortable. So you have to go through sort of learning a sequence and then relearning it for another purpose. And as you pick up, improved movement, the ideas of the concept, then there's sort of this, an awakening. It's like a light bulb going off and say, oh, this is what that is. So you go through those kind of experiences.
The way I would interpret what you said, tell me if I'm wrong, is that you are moving with the least amount of tension in your body. Because I think, I see a lot of people move, and I would say they move with a lot of tension. They do this, and I can see the tension developing in their body. But I think Tai Chi, what it does, it teaches them, hey, you can get here to here without having to feel like you're doing this, and you can just let that flow.
So why I say movement is, the key to health or key to life is because as you start to do the movements, it's almost impossible to be stiff after a while. Because when you move, you can't move when you're rigid. So like if you stiffen your arms like this and then you want it to bend, first thing you do is have to relax. If you're in a relaxed state, you have to differentiate between what is that relaxed state and what is flaccid motion. So the balance between those two things is the type of energy or strength that you're using while you're moving. So it's a learning curve that's pretty steep in the beginning, but once your body starts to recognize that it's kind of done like this, which most people do, so you see people doing Tai Chi that doesn't have structural integrity, which is more of just meditative floating type of thing. But if you're doing Tai Chi is it has the structural and so forth, then it becomes a different learning. So it gets deeper and deeper as far as movement.
Sounds like it can get pretty meditative.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. So that we classify it's classified as active meditation,
Oh, okay.
right? So what is meditation? It's the mindfulness and being in the moment, right? But for us, when you learn the movements and it becomes movements that enter your subconscious, at that point it then becomes meditation. So in the beginning it doesn't go there because you're always thinking, what's the next movement? How do I do this? And then when you try to improve the movements, you're taking in theories and concepts, trying to just work one movement over and over again, trying to pick that up. But so that at that point your mind is still active and it's kind of talking to the body how I should do it. But at some point when it becomes where the habit becomes a good habit, where that's what a form is. It's like a giant habit that it's been memorized in the body and it's all wired. So your movements you go through the motions and you really don't have to think about it. So that's called the no-mindedness. When people study martial arts, that no-mindedness is where it becomes a reflex.
So sort of like don't do the movement, let the movement happen to you.
Yeah.
In a way.
So that's what happens in self-defense. You have to reach that level of no-mindedness and it all comes out. It doesn't use the brain anymore.
Yeah. So what's the benefit when someone reach that state where they can feel these movements come naturally to them?
Well, that's what it exactly is, natural state. Movements become natural. Your body will function, do its task throughout the day or whatever you do. It always has that element of finding the right way to do it.
Right. So practicing Tai Chi to its highest level allows you to do other tasks more comfortably, like even like washing dishes and things like that.
Yeah, washing dishes, or if you have a skill that requires lots of dexterity, or you're using, if you work with, if you're an artist, or if you're all those things start to come up, because it's all tied to like calligraphy, or, that's an art form. It's how you use your strength when you use the brush. So all of these things are kind of linked together.
All right, so practicing Tai Chi have the components that is involved in all these other activities that you would do.
Yeah, just like music, how do you learn a piece and have it become, natural and embodying the motion? So the good musicians actually embody, and it comes out. It's, as I usually say, music is to the ears and movement is to the eyes, right? So,
wow, love it.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. I mean, we have some mutual clients of mine who are seeking Tai Chi, and they were working with Alex Wu, who he's a little bit of a local celebrity, went to Cirque du Soleil, and as he moved away, was oh my God, we need to find someone else, and you were his master, so it was a very easy to transition over and talking to you, and I'm learning a lot right now, just understanding just the backstory and how much there is to this one piece, because I think most people don't understand. They look at it and it's like, it's these movements. I just do these movements, but it's way deeper than that.
Yeah. So that's really my goal, is to get more people to understand, why it's beneficial, not just that it exists, and if I think, as I, go through life teaching many people, the message is really the important part of it, the understanding here before it even gets into here. Because once it gets the understanding here, the tendency is to try to transfer it into the body. If you're teaching blindly and the body doesn't know what you're trying to do and you don't know what you're trying to do, the results are not going to be the same.
Right, so you have to really be bought into the practice to really gain the benefit. You can't just go in and watch a video of someone do it and try to mimic it. You're not going to get the same benefit.
Wow. I mean, many people get into things and they're fanatical. You don't have to be fanatical, but you have to be consistent.
Right, you have to be consistent. Like, how consistent does someone have to be to really reap the benefits if they were to be fully present and accept the teaching?
Yeah, so a lot of people say, how often should I do this, right? Because they come once a week. So if you want to learn, frequency is the most critical thing, and seeing it is the most critical thing, because that's how we learn. Mimicking is how we learn. We have the ability to mimic moves because it's in our DNA already. But the thing is, if you don't see it and you don't do it, it hasn't entered the long-term memory. It's in the forefront of your mind. When you're doing it, then it comes back. So that's where you have to kind of, at least in the beginning, break that mode and get in the habit of doing it. Everything is a habit, sort of. So then your body will start to pick it up, and if you do something sort of religiously every day, then your tendency is to kind of follow that pattern. So it's like eating, we know that we should eat, but, should it be just like once a week?
Right.
You have to feed yourself the nutrients. So same thing with movement. If you do it frequently, then the body will start to, do things according to what you're telling it to do. And like I said, it's a book of movement, so, you go through the book and then you forget half of what you saw. But the thing is, you have to go through it, and then people that are ambitious, they will go back and read the story over and over again, and that's how you really know the story.
Yeah, I mean, that goes for us too as a physical therapist looking at movement. We take these courses, we understand how the muscles work, but every time we go back and review it with new insight, we understand these movements a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then we can apply it
Yeah.
in a different way and help our clients move in a different way.
Yeah.
And we tell our clients too, we're trying to, people who come to us with chronic issues, we're trying to break old movement habits the same way.
Yeah.
And they ask, how often do I do this? I'm like, every single day.
Yeah.
Because we need to break those old habits,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And when you develop those new habits, your body actually would feel better. And when it feels
Exactly.
better, it wants
Yeah.
to keep those new habits because they see it as beneficial. That's just sort of how we develop as a species. We are, we're built to survive.
Right.
So I see that connection with what you're doing with the Tai Chi space.
Yeah.
Now, I do have some fun questions. I talked to Drew, all right? I talked to Drew, and I was like, hey, is there anything I should ask that I wouldn't be able to find online or something? So you, before opening the school, you had a bean sprout business?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about the bean sprout business, and when did you decide to let that go and go full into Calvin Chin Martial Arts Academy?
So I went into bean sprout business because it was my dad recommended going into, I studied engineering in the beginning, right? So, but at the time, the jobs weren't, wasn't a high-paying job back in the early days. So then he said, do you want to go into business for yourself? So I said, what am I going to do? What kind of business can I do? So that's how I got into bean sprout business. And the reason why I got into it was because of the restaurant businesses. And they all use bean sprouts. And at the time, there was a lot of, there was only a half a dozen sprouters, or maybe less, three sprouters. And they grew them. And so my dad used to have a restaurant, and he grew them. So I used to water those for him. And so I knew the process, but I'm a kid. I just would do what he would tell me to do. So then he wanted me to go into business. I said, well, I don't know anything about it other than that. So I did some little research, and because I had some background in building things, I designed a system to try to automate what the older people did. They used to water by hand. So I added timers, I built this system to grow them, and that was my challenge throughout my career, doing that, to try to improve the product and market it and so forth. So that's how I got into it, and that's where I learned a lot of things about, the processes. So why I ended up teaching martial arts, because any business that actually has a demand becomes competitive, right? The more, because everybody wants to get into it. It's always like that. So I was one of the innovative of the automated systems, but the thing is, everybody started doing that. They were selling systems from Taiwan, and China probably was building their systems. So then it was kind of time to get out because it was getting saturated. Everybody wanted to do it.
The bean sprout business.
Right.
Got popular.
It got popular.
Okay. Wait, let me get this straight. So when you say restaurants, are we talking about the Chinese restaurants?
Chinese restaurants, Japanese restaurants,
Right.
they all use the bean sprout. And then I broke into the supermarkets.
Oh, okay. So
So
your
all-
bean sprouts have gone into the supermarkets.
Yeah, I'm actually one of the persons that brought it into the supermarkets back in the
Wow.
70s. So all the supermarkets you see, I probably supplied the New England ones, somewhat to New York. But the thing is, I supplied the Star Markets, all the buyers back there. I knew most of them. So I got into that, so that's how I learned to market and sell product and so forth. So then I decided to open a school because the only reason why I actually went into business, this is an afterthought, was because I wanted to make a living or somehow make a living to support what I was doing, which was my martial arts. My passion was the martial arts.
Your
but
passion wasn't bean sprouts?
No. Well,
Okay.
well, once I got into the business, that became my the thing too, because you always want to be the best at what you do, right? But martial arts was something that I was also doing at the same time. I was running both of those. I didn't own the business. It was my teacher's school, but I supported him throughout all the years. For 27 years, I taught for him. And then I did that. So then it was my time when he was ready to retire, and Drew's mom, Helen, asked me if I was interested in doing a school, opening a school. And I said, "You're going to help me?" And that's how it all started.
Right. And so, yeah, your passion had always been in martial arts, and the bean sprout
Yeah.
was, it's an avenue to, you got to
Yeah,
make some money.
make a-
You
yeah,
got to
yeah,
live,
yeah.
right? And then after that, you have enough stored away, and you're like, you know what? Let's chase this passion right here.
Yeah, so that's how it evolved into that, and actually initially, I never wanted to be a teacher or open a school. It wasn't really my goal.
What was your goal then?
I don't know. I didn't really know.
Oh, okay, got it. So you fell on it.
No, I didn't know. It was, when you have a passion for something, it's really not what you want to capitalize on. You don't want to monetize it to the sense that it becomes just selling that. Because I know too many people that went into that, and when they couldn't survive because of the economic part of it, they lost interest in what their passion was at the point. So that could have happened to me, because now it's not what you expect. But they're actually two different things. What you get from making a living and what you do as a passion, when you merge those together, it doesn't always come out with the same end, because I'm not doing it for my interest in self-cultivation. It becomes something that becomes a material object, or so that's why I'm always in the middle of that. But my goal now is just to teach people the best I can if they're interested in learning.
Yeah. Well, it's been 25 years now since the school's been open, right?
Yeah, 28.
28
actually,
years.
28.
Wow.
And I was in the bean sprout business for 25, 26.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you still involved in the bean sprout business, or that's completely?
No, everybody that was in the business when I was in it, they're out of it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Completely out.
Yeah, so it's been taken over by a person that I knew back in the day, and then he sold it. So I don't know exactly who's producing it now, but it's all mechanized, it's all automated.
Yeah, I'm sure it's totally
Yeah.
different now
Yeah.
than when you had your hands in it. All right. So with Calvin Chin Martial Arts Academy, so it's you there.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a huge place. If you guys go check it out, it's giant. Now, you have other instructors there, and you have a bunch of different classes going on.
Yeah.
Correct? How many instructors do you have right now?
We have about 9 or 12. Actually, my instructors are my students, because we don't hire from outside, because I can't. They're all trained from many people who studied before, a few people who studied with my teacher, but they're all involved with the school, and they actually became my indoor students or discipleship. So they're the ones that will carry on the tradition, and
I love that.
Yeah, so they're gonna So they're the ones that are teaching, and most of the experience that anyone gets is from the hands-on experience, and that so you have to teach in order to carry on any type of thing, tradition like this.
Wow. So it sounds like if someone wants to learn Tai Chi, to learn Kung Fu from the way it was taught traditionally from, generations before you, like you guys will have the right people to teach it because you guys aren't hiring just anyone on the street. You guys are just kind of breeding these instructors. They came in as students and then they become passionate and then they become instructors.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool because there's not a lot of places that really hold on to old traditional methods.
Yeah.
And have that available to people to learn. So I think what you're doing is super special, and I want to see Calvin Chin Academy flourish for the next century because I think this is an art form that really needs to just exist. People need to just know about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact. Well, meeting you was an amazing thing. One of Drew's friends, and because he told me what you did and that you built this. And then, when we met and you came to Academy and we were talking about, the synergy and maybe what I do, because I call mine the modern approach to an antiquated way, and yours is a modern approach to physical therapy. So, we have our thoughts and it's how we do it, right?
Yeah.
So, like you're saying, all these instructors that we have, we talk about how we teach all the time because we always run into not obstacles, but dealing with people that are, because people are so different. And so we just have to kind of, get on the same page as how we approach, teaching a certain person. They could have ADD, they could have this, so it could be. But we accept everyone simply because if there's an interest, then we're there to help them.
Absolutely.
Just like you.
Yeah. And we keep our teachings the same too. So all the therapists that we have, we all practice the same way. If you come and see me, you see Dr. Brandon, Dr. Adrian, you kind of get the same philosophical insight into how your body moves and where's making those changes to movement patterns.
Yeah.
So
that's very, really important for longevity in a business. You had the consistency of what you do, because if it's changing all the time, then people that are your patients, they come back and say, well, why is it like this now, right? They feel a little confused.
Yeah, you don't build a brand.
Right.
You become a more like commoditized a company, and that's not really what we're looking to build, and that's not what you're looking to build either.
No, right.
Great, so it's so nice having you. Before we hop off, can we just let the audience know where can they find you if they want to learn more about Calvin Chin Academy?
Yeah, so I have a website, it's called calvinchin.com. If you click on that, you'll go to the website, and there's a lot of information there. There's some articles that I had written back when we were doing them with interviews, and you can just go to info@calvinchin.com, and you can email us about a schedule or to come by and just drop in. And the location is 66 Winchester Street in Newton Highlands. And our phone number, which we don't answer that often, email would be better. And